We just got back home and I wanted to film this really quick so that I can edit it, get it up in time. And this is going to be a very short video. This is not going to be like a normal RM episode. But we just flew in from New York City where Sean Diddy Combs was found not guilty on all of his major charges. So he was facing 5 counts and we're going to get into all of that. But day 3 of jury deliberation was, this was the day the verdict came out. It was obviously like the most intense day thus far. I would say the first day of jury deliberation was very stressful. There was a lot of unknown energy. Nobody really knew which way it was going to go. People were reading very deeply into the juror notes. The jury sent back a few notes. The first one being that there was the news media, everyone's been calling it like a rogue juror. Like they get into the deliberation room. They send out their first note. It's a handwritten note by the jury foreman who is voted upon. This is like the leader of the jury. They don't have much more power, but they sign off on all these notes. And they send in that note and it says that juror number 25 cannot follow instructions. And this becomes a whole ordeal. Everyone is like, what do you mean they cannot follow instructions? Does that mean that they cannot follow instructions? Or they do not want to follow instructions? What does it mean? It got to the point where people, like a lot of the members of the press, were confused and wondering, is this person maybe not able to comprehend certain parts of the English language that might be applicable to the law? And so they start digging into the jury selection process and they find out that this man is a PhD student, a scientist. And so everyone's like, okay, that's clearly not the case. So is it like a health thing? Do they have a medical emergency where they cannot follow the instructions? People were thinking of everything because when you're in the dark and all you get are these little snippets of notes, you start spiraling. And this is coming from people from the press and the public. I can't imagine what it would be like to be on the prosecution team or the defense team or part of the defendant's family. It seems very intense. That's the first note. Then there's a few follow-up notes. One of them is asking about what drug distribution means. Another one is asking for testimony transcripts from Cassie Ventura's testimony about the Intercontinental Hotel incident, as well as a Cannes Film Festival incident. So these are the main notes that are coming in. And people were thinking, okay, maybe it's going to be 4th of July weekend. Like it's going to be finished up on Wednesday afternoon. If it's not finished, Thursday, Friday, we're out of court. So maybe the following Monday we'll get a verdict. And then Tuesday, at the very end of the day, yesterday, a note comes in that they have found a verdict, a partial verdict, a verdict on 4 of the 5 counts, but they are deadlocked on count 1, which is the RICO charge.
Which is everything, life.
Yeah. They go home, they sleep it off, and this morning, a note comes in at 9:52 in the morning. The jurors they went to the jury room at 9 o'clock in the morning. 52 minutes in, a note comes in and it reads, "We have reached a verdict on all counts." The judge is reading this out. He's asking anything to address before we bring the jury out. So this just means the jury's going to come out, he's going to get it, and they're going to read it out, and the jurors are going to say, yes, this is what I voted. They're going to go one by one. Yes, this is what I voted. This is what I voted. Both parties respond no. Now, by this point, jury deliberation day 1, jury deliberation day 2, Sean Combs and his family were not in the best of moods. Like they seem like they're 1 second away from a mental breakdown, all of them. It seems like the defendant or Sean Combs is comforting his mother nonstop. It just seems like everybody is an emotional wreck, which is understandable, but it just felt like a lot of people are speculating, do they know a little more that we don't know? Is there something in the legal process that we haven't gotten a whiff of yet, and they see the signs that something is amiss before we see the signs? And he seems just as stressed when the jurors are led back in and they give their little slip to the judge, who reads it for about 30 seconds. He gives it to the deputy, who reads, "In the matter of U.S. v. Combs, how do you find the defendant Sean Combs for count 1? And now, juror number 5, the jury foreman, this is like the leader of the group. This is like what they vote on. He's going to be the one that reads it out loud, their verdict. But he's like their spokesperson. I mean, he doesn't have like an extra vote or anything. He's just their spokesperson. He reads, "Not guilty." This is the count that they were deadlocked on all day. This is the RICO charge, not guilty. Now, a lot of people in the press pews, in the public, I mean, all we could do was speculate all day for like the past 2 days. And there were speculations that perhaps he would be found guilty on 2 of the smaller charges, maybe not RICO because they were deadlocked on it. Maybe a lot of people were thinking that was going to be a hung jury, the RICO charge, and that it would have to be retried. But they come back not guilty. And you hear like a small gasp inside the courtroom from one of the family members. But it's not even like that small. I don't know if it's a small gasp. I don't know if it was just so deadly silent. It's unclear. It's just like everyone is focused on all these little things. As for sex trafficking for Cassandra Ventura, how do you find the defendant? Not guilty. Now, at this point, one of the family and friends members of the 2 pews, they are like, yes. Like, they're like, yeah, they're not screaming it. It's more of a audible noise. And it seems like everyone is breaking out into smiles over there. Everybody is like happily nodding. Even Sean Combs is like a little hesitant, but he seems like he's trying to look at the jury and see, because everything's going in his favor at this point.
And that's like a charge that everyone thought is going to be guilty, right, Cassandra?
Everyone thought if he doesn't get RICO, he's going to get sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura. Transportation for purposes of prostitution related to Cassandra Ventura, guilty. There's no reaction. The deputy and the foreperson continue. As for sex trafficking of Jane, how do you find the defendant? Not guilty. Diddy, at this point, has now broken out into full smiles because those were the 3 biggest charges. So count 1, count 2, and count 4. So 3 is the transportation across state lines for prostitution. That's a very minor charge compared to everything else in his counts. The RICO charge, the sex trafficking charges, 1 against Cassie and 1 against Jane, these are his major charges. He was just found not guilty of his major charges. So everything else, it doesn't really matter. This is like a huge win. This is everything he probably wanted, a little short of getting acquitted of all the charges. Everybody is breaking out into smiles. All of his adult children, some of them brought their partners, their girlfriends. A lot of the mother of his children's were there. I think the only person not there was his youngest child, who is an infant, obviously. Kenny Garagos is like tightly gripping Sean Combs' hand. They seem friendly. They seem close. Transportation for prostitution for Jane. Guilty. As the foreperson is reading the verdict, looking exclusively towards the judge, the remaining 11 jurors are like just stone cold faces. Like, you can't really read their expression. None of them are really looking at Diddy. They're just kind of listening and waiting. Meanwhile, Diddy is like nodding at them, trying to get them to make eye contact with him. And he's like trying to mouth thank you almost. He does at one point, and it's a very interesting, the whole feeling of this verdict is like an escalation to mass goosebumps. There's not like this, every single charge that's read out, it felt more eerie. Everybody has goosebumps. And I don't mean eerie in like the negative sense of the word. It just felt strange. I think a lot of people had vastly different reactions. And I'm choosing not to use the word eerie because I think a lot of people were very happy with the verdict. A lot of people were very unhappy with the verdict. So to use eerie across the whole courtroom is odd. It's just like it's an undescribable sensation of a weird energy. You just start feeling goosebumps the entire time. You feel like you're shaking, even though this technically has nothing to do with you. Like, this isn't your life. This isn't your family member's life, but it feels weird. I don't know if it's the energy that's rubbing off, and the tension is just so high strung. I think at this point, all of the past 2 months have accumulated to this very moment. From the angle that we are sitting on, you can't really see the prosecutors. So it's very hard to get a read of what they're thinking, how they're reacting, but I'm assuming that it was not a pleasant day for them. The defense team, on the other hand, Diddy is nodding empathetically at the jurors. You know, he's releasing his hand from Tenny's. He's like putting it into prayers and saying thanks, like mouthing thank you, silently to each of the jurors. And the jurors are dismissed. They're thanked, led out of the room. Nobody says anything. And then at that point, the judge says that he is open to hear any applications, to which Mr. Agnifilo immediately stands up and is like, his family is here. He should be released. They say he is no longer charged with sex trafficking or racketeering. His plane has been chartered. It's in Maui. He does not have access to his plane. This is his first conviction, and it's a prostitution offense. He should be released. So at this point, we still have to wait for sentencing, which might be a month out. And he's saying, Mark Agnifilo is arguing he should be released so that he can come back for sentencing. There's no reason to keep him in jail.
He should be out on bail. Right?
Yes, that's what they're proposing. I believe they proposed like $1 million bond and a bunch of other things that they sent in a letter that's on the docket for this case. The government is opposing this. They're saying absolutely not. We are going to seek that not only does he stay in jail before sentencing, but probably during sentencing, they're going to go after maximum for these two charges, which is 10 years each. He's not going to get it, but...
So they're proposing like 20 years together, right?
Yeah. They're aggressively fighting back of like, no, absolutely not. The judge says he needs some time to think about it. They're going to send in their proposals and he's going to take everything into consideration. He leaves the bench and the court is temporarily adjourned. As everybody is standing for the judge as he walks off, Tenny puts her arm around Diddy's shoulder, gives him a squeeze. Diddy's chair gets pushed a little bit back and he turns around to his family. He falls to his knees. He rests his elbows on the chair that he was just sitting at. So he's facing the gallery. He's facing the back of the courtroom. And he just shuts his eyes in like a prayer. And he's praying. It seems like a really long time. I don't know if it's just the way that time works in a courtroom at these high tense moments. It felt like an eternity. It could have been 3 seconds. It could have been a minute. Mark Agnifilo is looking at him. He looks very pleased. Tenny has tears in her eyes. I mean, it appears that they're really close because Sean Combs was close with Mark Garagos.
Her dad, yeah.
Her dad, yeah. So she starts crying to the point where she does have to dab tissues on her eyes. And all of his defense team, the attorneys, they're all giving each other hugs. In the entire courtroom, it just kind of erupts into cheers. At this point, Judge Arun, Father Arun, is off the bench. So it's not like they're doing this in his presence because that would be highly unlikely. But I mean, people are cheering, people are clapping, people are whooping. It's like, it's so dramatic and they're cheering as he's on his knees and he just slowly stands up from his knees very dramatically as if he's like rising from the ashes. It feels very cinematic for what? And it was just the weirdest moment. And he starts hugging his defense team members. He's cheering, saying, "Thank you, I love you," to his family who are clapping back, yelling, crying. The defense attorneys are like huddled together like they just won a championship. And you just see a lot of the members of the public who are also in the courtroom. They're erupting in cheers. They're all excited. You could literally feel the goosebumps, even if you do not agree with the verdict. There's something about the energy inside of that courtroom that it just feels strange. It's just like a lot of energy. So with that, court is adjourned for them to figure out if Diddy is going to be released on bond, if he is going to be technically a somewhat free man until sentencing. And even at sentencing, he still might be a free man if he gets no jail time. And when you walk out of this courtroom, it's not even just the energy in the courtroom, the energy outside the courthouse. Like if you thought it was strange the first week or two of trial, which was probably the most intense 2 weeks, it is crazy. There are people outside chanting "Free Puff." There's people outside wearing matching t-shirts. Some of them read "Frico is not a Rico."
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
That was given out by his best friend, right?
Yeah, so they're like wearing matching t-shirts. There is one very famous TikToker who had taken his shirt off and people were rubbing baby oil on him. There are people live streaming at every like cross section of outside this courthouse. People are getting into fights because at this point it seems like a lot of the live streamers have split into two camps. One camp that believed that Diddy was going to be found guilty on all charges. One camp that was very pro Diddy and wanted to, quote, free Puff. So those have been almost like, it's like a war outside the courthouse. Doug Wigder, Cassie's attorney, is walking out. We're trying to get like videos of him. He's just like walking out. The press are running up to him. Donaldson, Nicole Westmoreland walk out at one point. And they're not really saying much. The attorneys are probably going to give a formal statement maybe around the time that this video goes up, if not like right before this video goes up. I'm trying to time it well, but it's interesting. So I mean, they're going to be happy. If anyone is coming out of this a winner, aside from Diddy, it's going to be his defense team. There's fights still breaking out outside. And what's interesting is you would think that a lot of the public would be fighting between the pro Diddy supporters and the not supporters of Diddy. But a lot of it is actually people who support Diddy fighting each other. There's like one
What?
person who's screaming and upset and is like, these people weren't here every day that I was here supporting Diddy, so why are they suddenly showing up to support Diddy? And a lot of people are just like, I think you need a job because this is crazy to be arguing about. They don't even know Diddy personally. So like, what is happening outside the courthouse? It's literally just mayhem. It's chaos. Like, it doesn't even make sense. I think like we're still having a hard time comprehending anything that's just happened. And everyone's talking about what's going to happen next. So here's what we know. He was not found guilty on RICO. He was not found guilty on any sex trafficking charge. He was found guilty on count 3 and 5, which are the transportation for prostitution charges. They are a maximum of 10 years each. That's just a sentencing guideline. By no means does Father Arun have to adhere to that. He could give him time served with probation. He could give him 3 years served concurrently, which means at the same time. So both charges 3 years, but he really only spends 3 years in prison.
And because there's no minimum, like he could be walking out, right?
He could get like just probation for 5 years. It's really all up to Father Arun at this point. Now, I'm sure he has a lot to take into consideration, like the fact that Deontay Nash and Cassie Ventura have both submitted letters to the judge today saying, hey, we don't feel safe if he is out on bail.
Oh, really?
They were saying, we don't feel safe. We don't think other people are going to feel safe. I mean, the judge has a lot to take into consideration before he figures out what to do. Also, there is this thing where if he does let Diddy out on bond, there is a speculation that his attorneys are going to just drown the court with more motion so that they can push sentencing, and then they're just going to try to lag it, which is going to be a big headache. By this point, I mean, yes, he was found guilty on 2 charges, but this is probably the best outcome that he could have gotten from this case. I think a lot of people were surprised, and I think we're still having a hard time digesting everything that's happened. By the time that this video goes up, we will probably know if he's going to get out on bond or not. I'm going to leave it in the pinned comment, but I don't really know. I feel like I need to conclude this entire video with some sort of feeling or thoughts or opinions, and I don't really have ones that are going to sound new and introspective and fresh. I think the whole team and I have just been wrapping our minds around it. The verdict was surprising but unsurprising at the same time. I think that we had a lot of faith in the feds. I will say that throughout the moments, there were times throughout this entire trial, we would come home after a long court day, and there would be moments where I would say, what just happened? And I think I mentioned it very briefly in a few episodes where I was like, when I'm there, I see the energy in the courtroom. I see the jurors' responses to a lot of these questions. I could be misinterpreting their facial expressions. I feel like the defense is so great at controlling the narrative, controlling the emotions inside the courtroom, that I walk out and I'm like, what just happened? I read the transcripts and I'm like, no. The government knows what they're doing because this makes sense on the transcript. Everything is here. Like the coercion, I can see it. I can feel it. To me personally, in my opinion, it's there, right? But I think that, and we would try to comfort each other. Like the team would be like, no. But the feds have such a crazy conviction rate.
Yeah.
Like they know what they're doing. They're so capable, which they are. But there were a lot of times where we were trying to wrap our heads around the fact that the defense team came off incredibly charismatic. And I know that maybe to people that haven't been inside of even this specific courtroom or like any courtroom, maybe it means nothing. Like maybe this would have meant nothing to me prior to this trial, being there in person. They come off charismatic. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, okay, well, he's still a criminal. Like, I still don't like Diddy. What does his attorney's charisma have anything to do with it?
Yeah.
But when you spend 8-9 hours in a cramped courtroom with the same 20 people all day, every day, I'm sure that the jurors care about who's likable.
Yeah, I think like for me, we've been talking about this for months. Every time you're talking about these lawyers and then their body language, the way they talk, the way they act, the way the juror responds to it, that I feel like that carries a much bigger weight than even we anticipated. Even though every day you come home, you're like, oh, I saw this person smirking. I saw they reacted this way. I don't know. I think jurors really liked it. I think the jurors really liked what they said. And then we're like, but are they going to ignore all the evidence and this and that? The attorneys that Diddy hired, I mean, I guess they won the jurors over.
Yeah, because I don't think it was him that won the jurors over. I think that I think they did an exceptional job at what they were supposed to do, which is win the jury over. I think the prosecutors probably could have done a better job at winning the jurors over. I think that a lot of times during their direct examinations of very crucial witnesses such as Cassie and Jane, I do know that Jane is a bit more of a contentious witness, as a lot of people, even on the internet, are having these very lengthy debates about whether or not it was sex trafficking. Because for Jane, she was 35 years old when she met Sean Combs. She had a child, and the main coercion aspect that the government is trying to tell the jurors is that she was obsessed, she was in love with him, and additionally, he was paying for the house. Now, I think a lot of people online were like, well, she can move out. She's 35. She can just get a job. And like, she can't be that love struck if she's a mom. Like, she needs to think about her kid. Like, people were having these types of debates online about Jane. However, for Cassie, I think a lot of people online were expecting a guilty verdict for the sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura. She was 18 when she met him. She was signed to like a 10-album record deal with his record label. There was so much violence throughout their relationship that could easily factor into the force, fraud, or coercion that a lot of people were taken aback that this was a not guilty verdict. And ultimately, it just came down to the jurors believed unanimously that Cassie wanted these freak-offs, that she consented to this, that she was a willing participant. Now, if I were in a juror's position, would I have thought that? No. But I wasn't. I'm not on the jury, and that's just how our justice system works, unfortunately, whether we like it or not. So whether people agree with this verdict online or not doesn't really change as much, because the jurors still just did what the jurors did.
Yeah. And, like another thing we notice is like every time you're talking about the way Diddy's attorney, even their closing statement, the difference between the prosecutor's closing statement versus Diddy's team's closing statement is totally different, right? Diddy's team is super casual. They're just being like, we're not even getting to all the nitty gritties. This is all about a love story, blah, blah, blah. And whatever it is, that delivery worked.
I think the problem is with a case like this, and I don't mean to say everyone, and I don't mean to say us or you guys as an audience, but I think with maybe an older jury, they were a little bit older than maybe you and I might be on this jury pool, with a lot of men on the jury pool, I would say that
8 men, right?
Yeah, with 8 men out of 12 jurors, there was I think a lot of it came down to emotion. I think a lot of it felt like it could be spun both ways. I don't think it was a he said, she said case. I think there was a lot of evidence pointing, at least me in my opinion, towards sex trafficking of at least Cassie Ventura, right? But I think that a lot of people felt it was a he said, she said. And in these situations, I feel like emotion always wins. And the defense, they came with the emotions. Every cross-examination would be where you felt the most emotion, whether it be positive or negative towards the witness. The direct examinations, it was very few and far in between. Like they examined Cassie Ventura for so many days, the prosecution did, and there were not many palpably emotional moments in the courtroom. I think on paper, the words were emotional. I think on the transcript, the words were emotional, but they came out, the way that the prosecutor would ask the questions was very flat and monotoned. It just didn't.
So would you say like the star team of Diddy's did their job?
Yeah,
right?
And I think that, I just feel bad for the witnesses.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the witnesses. I think it's just another reminder that we still live in a world where I think a lot of people need a perfect victim, and you're just not going to get that in most cases. And I think that's very depressing to find out through this trial. I think people have a hard time understanding that victims can be multifaceted. I also think it's very interesting the way that people have been discussing the domestic violence of this case. I know that's not a charge, and that's almost become the focal point of like, well, he wasn't charged with domestic violence, but it is part of the coercion aspect. And I think it's interesting that more people have upset and very loud feelings about Jane wanting a Chanel bag and Cassie wanting a lifestyle versus him being a violent abuser. And I think that's a very interesting juxtaposition that's been happening online of like, people are saying, well, he's just a domestic violence abuser and he can get help for that. But they make it seem like Cassie receiving money or Jane wanting a Chanel bag is some sort of fatal crime, some sort of fatal personality flaw that cannot be defended. It's just very interesting the way that people have been comparing those two elements of this case. Now, there have been lots of speculations online and rumors mainly that Diddy has bought out some of the jurors that are possibly being paid. One comment reads, "It's painfully obvious one of the jurors took the payoff in order to cause a mistrial. It's so transparent that it's actually ridiculous. The only reason the jury is hung is because the juror thought money was more important than actual justice." So this was when they were deadlocked on the RICO charge. However, looking back at the timeline of how, unless he paid off all of them, which is so highly unlikely, pretty much impossible and not proven and completely a baseless allegation and internet rumor, there's just no way that they would have come back with a not guilty verdict on the major charges in the time that they did. Because within like a day and a half, they already decided on the sex trafficking charges, and they were just stuck on RICO.
That's why we also we're looking back, right? Yesterday, they were deadlocked on RICO. We thought maybe 7 of them thinks he's guilty, and then maybe 5 of them think he's not. But now looking back, it seems like majority thinks he's not guilty.
Yeah.
And there was a few thinks he is guilty.
Yeah. But I do think that these comments about him purchasing or buying off jurors is very interesting and very depressing in the sense of, that's how little faith we have in our justice system. And I think it's completely accurate. So, while I do think it's just a rumor as it pertains to this case, it's kind of sad. I felt like a lot of people overestimated what the feds were going to do, what the government was going to come in with, what the prosecutors were going to be able to accomplish. And I don't know if this is accurate, but I felt like the prosecutors completely overestimated the jury. I feel like because maybe the prosecutors are a little bit on the younger end, I don't know, maybe they're on TikTok, maybe they're watching the same things you and I are watching. And maybe we feel like, hey, consent is complicated, but it's very clear when someone is feeling coerced. Even if they send text messages like, "I love it," you can tell through other inferences that they clearly don't love it. And I think maybe they expected that from the jury, because I don't think that they did the best job at explaining how it was coercion over and over again in a way that felt emotionally moving, perhaps, to that jury. Whereas I think the defense, they were pulling out excuses that were used decades ago. This is a love story. They both wanted it. They just like to be having fun in the bedroom. The government doesn't belong in the bedroom. These are all things that we get icked out by because we've heard them decades ago. And we're like, how does this still work today in the big old year of 2025? But it did end up working. But ultimately, that is where we are with the case. It's very clear who the winners are in this. It's Diddy and it's his defense team. Brian Steele has been trending again with people calling him the RICO remover. He represented Young Thug in a RICO case as well, so that's what he's most well known for, and now Combs. So people are saying he's 2 for 2 now. The whole defense team, I imagine that they're like the new dream team. There's a lot of Diddy supporters online that are saying, we knew he'd be innocent. They were just trying to take down a successful black man, which a lot of people have a lot of interesting discourse about. And other people are saying, this is the weirdest flex ever. Search all of their computers. Does nobody have a job? How are we supporting him after the CNN video? If anything, the CNN video is enough. Other people are commenting that a standing ovation inside the courtroom is criminal. Other people are commenting, this Diddy trial is now proof that you can do anything if you have money. Other people are responding to that comment saying, yeah, which is why I'm too broke to break the law. Other people think it's very interesting because Mark Agnifilo is representing 2 of the more high-profile cases that are going to be happening this year and next year. And they comment, Diddy's going to go free and Luigi Mangione is going to get convicted to the highest extent. Another person comments, this is exactly why victims don't come forward when they're abused, because nothing will be done anyways. So why live with the public ridicule? This is so sad. Others are commenting, I don't get it. He beat Cassie. How does a jury member not understand that is creating coercion out of fear? To which other people have been defending Diddy, saying, did you not see the part where she said she liked and wanted to participate in the freak-offs? And now a lot of people are just nervous because he might be free, he might be out on bond, he might not even get jail time during his sentencing, and people think that this is going to make him feel untouchable now. But as of right now, as of filming this, probably not by the time you see it, there were people outside chanting, let Puffy go, as the judge is making his decision on whether or not he's going to let him out on bond. which I'm gonna leave in the pinned comment. I know that this was not like a typical RM video. I feel like I haven't even really had the time to even get my thoughts together. This is just like right off the cuff of all of the things that the RM team has been feeling. So hopefully it was coherent enough, but what are your thoughts on this? How do you feel? Do you feel like justice was done? Do you feel like another day, another sad system moment? Let me know in the comments. Please stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.